that first year, I was like really sleep deprived and trying to figure out how to balance it all. And I watched this guy give a talk. He had sacrificed everything to make the company work, but he ended up getting divorced and lost the connection to his kids. And his regret was that he hadn't made enough time for his marriage and for his kids. It hit me at this moment that my first daughter was 1. And I eventually realized, I was like, the difference between this business working or not is not going to be if I work out in the morning or if I come home at 5 to hang out with my kids. If that's the difference, like, we have a problem.
Welcome to Eating Glass. It's a podcast where in each episode, we ask startup founders the questions no one else will. Our goal? To reveal what it's actually like to start, scale, and exit a company. I'm Joe LeMay, and I bootstrapped my reusable notebook company, Rocketbook, to a $50 million exit.
And I am Will Nitze, founder and CEO at IQ Bar, a nutrition company I took from 0 to 40+ million in annual revenue. For better or worse, we are your hosts. Eating Glass is sponsored by IQ Bar, which is my company, so be nice to it. What do we do here? We make IQ Bar plant protein bars, IQ Mix hydration mixes, and IQ Joe instant mushroom coffees. All of which are special because they are the only thing in their category that centers on nutrients good for your body, protein, electrolytes, things like that, as well as things that are good for your brain, so magnesium or lion's mane, to name a few. They are all delicious. Most functional foods and drinks taste like crap. Ours taste good, and taste matters. That is despite them being super low in sugar and super clean label. There's no weird stuff on our labels. And by the way, they're affordable. Functional stuff is usually price gougy, and we are not. I will not be offering a discount code. I will instead ask you a favor. Go to Amazon.com, search for IQ Bar, IQ Mix, IQ Joe, or some combination of the three. Find a non-sponsored listing, click on it, buy it, wait for it to arrive, and leave a review. And that is the only favor I will ever ask you. Thank you very much. Eating Glass is also sponsored by Ramp. Ramp is a corporate card and spend management software that we at IQ Bar have used for 5 years now, I think. And I actually reached out to them about sponsoring, not the other way around. I love them for 3 reasons. Number 1, simplicity. Everyone on our team gets a physical and a digital card. Replacing cards, pausing cards, putting limits on cards, insanely easy. Setup takes 10 minutes. Number 2, cash back. 1.5% cash back. You don't have to deal with points. If you're messing around with points, you are wasting your time. Just get cash back. Number 3, they are better at categorizing spend. So we not only save money on the cashback side, we save time on closing our books because they're just better at classifying. They give us an incredible offer for you guys, $250 free when you sign up for Ramp today. Go to ramp.com/glass. That's ramp.com/glass. Cards are issued by Sutton Bank and Celtic Bank, members FDIC. Terms and conditions apply. Final sponsor is Gorgias, Gorgias. This is the help desk / customer service app we use at IQ Bar. We've used it for years. Similar situation, I reached out to them about sponsoring, and we actually started on Zendesk and moved to Gorgias. Our customer service had forced us to, basically, and I was like, why did you force us to do that? Why is Gorgias so much better? And he said, number 1, apps and integrations are just better. We have a customer base on Shopify, Amazon. We want to be able to take phone calls. Like, all of that filters into one dashboard, and it makes his life easier. His user experience is easier. There's less clicking, less typing. Because of all the automations inherent to the Gorgias platform, he just has to do less, click less, have less tabs open. And the final thing is, it's really good for consumer brands. So returns, refunds, things that are centric to a business like mine are made really, really easy via the Gorgias platform. Go to gorgias.com. Again, that's Gorgias. Request a free trial. Mention us, Eating Glass. You will get preferential treatment, and you'll be up and running in 15 days.
Chris Savage, welcome. It's awesome to have you, man. So why don't you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what Wistia does?
Yeah, so I'm Chris Savage. I'm the co-founder and CEO of a company called Wistia. Wistia is a video marketing platform. And what that means is we have tools that make it easy to record videos, edit videos. We have a webinar product. But what we're really known for, what we've been doing for most of the history of the business, is hosting analytics and management of videos. So helping you understand how people watch every video, what they skip, what they rewatch, giving you a picture that you can understand how to make your content better, but also how to figure out who's interested in what. So because we track the individual down to the individual layer, you can tie that into your marketing systems. You can say, show me everybody who's interested in our coffee product. Show me everyone who's interested in our hydration product, show what our protein product, and then you can do that based on how they actually watch and engage. And so a couple other things. So we are about 200 people, never raised venture capital, just raised a little bit of angel money in the early days. And we're not your average tech company. So we've been around for almost 18 years. So we started in 2006. In 2017, we decided we had an opportunity to sell the business, decided not to sell, and instead raised debt and bought out our early investors and got liquidity for our team to really try to be a large private business.
What made you want to start a company? How'd you link up with your co-founder, and like bring me back to that very early days and what was motivating you?
Yeah, so we basically, my co-founder Brendan, he's my best friend. We met at Brown freshman year, lived on the same hall, and just got into a lot of hijinks and craziness at school. Worked on some projects together, and I would say like we had ideas for like get rich quick schemes / like and just like crazy ideas for companies we could build. And that came out of like, we knew some other people. We knew someone in school or had heard of someone in school who had patented an idea and then sold it and made all this money when we were like juniors or something. And so we were always talking about that. And then I majored in film while I was in school, and he did computer engineering. And we were just really close and constantly talking about things that were happening in tech and things that were changing. And so I graduated in 2005, and that was the same year that YouTube launched. And I saw YouTube really early, and I had tried to be a part of a bunch of filmmaking communities online. And all these communities, these are the people who can make videos, right, and make films. And so I would have thought that those would have been really vibrant. Like people would be constantly sharing work, getting feedback from each other and stuff like that. And actually, they were really very dead. There was not a lot of sharing of stuff. And then YouTube came along and it took off. And it was interesting because the content on YouTube was really different. There was a lot of pirated content back then. There was a lot of like UGC, user-generated content. And it was raw. It was different. It was fast. And one of the insights I had from this was pre-YouTube, if you want to put video online, you actually had to be a video technology expert. You had to understand how to encode your videos properly so that people could play it back. And there wasn't one specific way that every videos could play back. It would be a choice. So there was QuickTime, which was the Apple format. And I could encode things at QuickTime. It looked the best. But if you didn't have a Mac, you probably couldn't see my video. Or I could use Real Player. Everyone had Real Player. Real Player, the encoding was worse, so it didn't look as good. You could encode into Flash, and most people had Adobe Flash at the time, could play it back, but you had to make your own player. And so it was a mess. So it was this huge hurdle. And when we saw YouTube, anyone could upload anything and it would work. And we looked into it and we realized they were using open source tools to do the encoding of the video, which meant you did not have to be a video technology expert to get video online. And that was the key insight was, wow, they're using this thing and it's open source, so we can use it too. So we thought online video was going to get huge really fast. And we started riffing on ideas of how can we take advantage of this? If we think this big thing is going to happen and most people don't realize it yet, what should we do?
Is this still in college?
This is a year out of school. So I'm doing like, I helped produce a feature-length movie at that time. I was doing short films. I was working on commercials. I was doing production assistant work. I was doing all different sorts of things. And Brendan had a job as a software engineer at a company in Boston. But we were just constantly talking about this.
To get back to the motivation part, were you doing those things and you're like, I'm going to start something. I'm just doing these things until I get to the something. Like, was it a foregone conclusion that you were just waiting to the project where you and Brendan would do something?
That's a good question. It was not a foregone conclusion that we were definitely going to start a company. I mean, honestly, we didn't really understand what starting a company meant. But I had a really interesting experience because of that film I worked on. So I worked on this feature-length documentary with a filmmaker. I joined her. She'd already shot most of it. And I worked with her for 3.5 years, helping to edit and all these things. And this documentary, like, we got into a bunch of film festivals and we won them. And we won an Emmy and all this stuff. And I was credited as associate producer on this thing. And so I had this really unique experience at 21, wanted to do film. I had a feature film that I was associated with. We won festivals and all this stuff. But we couldn't, at that time, break through on distribution. It we distributed ourselves and the film made money, but we couldn't get, like, HBO was the premier documentary distributor at that time. And we really wanted HBO to distribute the movie. They're actually really close to distributing it. And then one person just decided one day, I don't want to do it. And I had this feeling in my core of like, man, to work on something for this long and have one person be able to control your destiny, that's horrible. And so I had this bad feeling about that. And I also had seen that some of my instincts were good as we'd been making the film. And so it just kind of drew me to this idea of like, I just want to be in control of my destiny. And I didn't know that would look like starting a company exactly, but I knew it probably looked like trying to create my own projects. And so then it was a natural fit. Brent and I, he was like my thought partner on all this stuff. I'm constantly talking to him about this, and he has all these ideas. And so that's how it just kind of turned into, hey, let's actually start a company to try to solve a problem here.
So it was basically an overnight success as soon as you jumped in there, right?
Oh, yeah.
What was the first concept that you were working on?
So the very first concept was we would make a filmmaking competition website. So imagine Coke wants an ad. They say to people like, the best ad that you make will give you 30 grand and we'll use it. And then tons of people create ads for Coke. And I had seen a few competitions like this that brands were just kind of starting to figure out. And I participated in some as an editor. And I realized that if I won one of these competitions, it might be better for my career than having a feature film. And that was like a shocking revelation. And so we said, let's make a platform to do this. I mean, we had a very complicated idea. Within a month, we gave up on it because it was like, who are we? Like, we don't have the relationships with these brands. Like, how are we ever going to like scale this to something else?
I kept thinking about 99 Designs with that original project. I was like, oh, this is 99 Designs for video.
That's kind of what it was. We just thought like, it's going to be so hard for us to turn this into a real business. We don't have that much time. Because the other part of this is we looked at our savings. We looked at how long we could survive. And we thought that we could give it 6 months. And then our plan would be, all right, we'll give this 6 months and then we'll sell it. Because I was so naive. I had no idea that, obviously you can't do that. Or we just give up and we wouldn't tell anyone that we tried it and we'd just go do something else.
I actually found my first videographer on a site like that. And he later became my head of operations at Rocketbook. I was just like, I found one of those contest sites. There were like some cool, quirky videos. I found one person and I was like, that's a cool video. And he was based, in a few towns over. And I like got in touch with them and we started making the first Rocketbook video together. So those were a thing, right? Were you the first idea and you bailed on it before they were a thing?
I think so. I mean, like we had a few things that turned into either that we tried for a little bit and then we didn't understand how long you had to invest in things to see if they're going to work or not.
Yeah.
We had a few things go viral that first year that were not this. We made we were just buying domains left and right. We bought this domain, ironingtheflag.com, which I just thought was like kind of cool.
Rolls right off the tongue.
Yeah, ironing the flag. It's like a patriotic thing or something. I didn't really know. We just like found the domain, bought it. And we were having a conversation one day about being in the Iraq War. And we realized that we had been in the Iraq War. We were like, have we been in the Iraq War longer than we were in World War II? So we looked it up. And we were like 3 days away from being in Iraq longer than World War II. So we took ironingtheflag.com. We made it a countdown until we'd been in Iraq longer than we were in World War II. And it went viral. And, it was on the front page of Reddit and Hacker News and all this stuff. It got tons of traffic. And it was kind of amazing to see this happen because our expectations were so warped because we launched this thing. We launched it even before it was right around we were giving up with the filmmaking competition side. I can't remember, but we hadn't launched anything else. So this is the first thing we did. We got 40,000 visitors the first day. And I was like, wow, okay. So I guess you just make stuff and it takes off. And we put advertising on it. It was our plan to make money. And actually that was crazy because it was also like, there were articles written by like major news publications about this. And I'm not sure if it was because of our site or not. It certainly felt like it at that time. But anyway, we put the ads on. Maybe we get like 150,000 visitors and we made like $100 in ads. And I was like, advertising, hard business model. That's what I remember thinking is like, this is going to be, it would be very tough to make anything because if we just went viral, I don't think that happens every day. It's pretty hard to make an advertising business model.
So you had done, the first one was kind of a network would require network effects to really work, the sort of 99 Designs business model to where It just becomes a big enough marketplace. The second one, so that's like scratch that, and then this other one's like the ad model, and then Wistia is the third model that's just a better model.
But we hit even other things along the way. We did this one, then we thought of an idea that was kind of similar because we're like, okay, there's like a stunt element. And do you guys remember $1 Million Homepage?
Yeah, with everyone buys a pixel.
Yeah, so 1 million pixels, everyone buys a pixel for $1. We're like, who does this guy think he is? Thinks he can make $1 million with like 1 million pixels? Like, we could do better than that. So we came with an idea called famethrower.com. And on Famethrower, you would like upload an image of something and link it. And whoever spent the most, it would like tessellate. Whoever spent the most, their image would be the biggest. So the idea was like that we'd try to build hype around this thing. It would be so absurd that we'd build hype and more people would want to like get in front of the attention they would pay and whatever. So we made this thing in like a week. And I went to $1 Million Homepage. I just clicked a bunch of pixels of people who were like willing to spend $1 on one of those pixels. And I just like sent an email to all these people. And I was like, hey, do you want to get on Famethrower? This is the new thing, like $1 Million Homepage. So it's like more exciting. And we got $1,500 the first day. And I remember thinking,
Just keep doing
this
that.
didn't go viral. So I was like, I thought it had failed. And of course, in hindsight, it had worked. And I like my whole perception was like upside down, like making $1,500 in a day for like a stunt like this. Obviously, if we had just kept going and like actually shared that, it probably would have built into something. But we were expecting it to go. We just had something go viral. This one didn't really feel like it went viral. So I don't think it's going to work. And then after that, we're like, okay, let's build something more simple than this competition on the website. Let's build something that people can really understand and something that's valuable. And so we made a portfolio website for these filmmakers. So like you could take your work and you could show it off, like your reel of stuff. And that we actually built. That took like 4 months to build. Got it out there. And we started getting people using it. Like hundreds of people were using this thing. But now we're running out of money. We're like 8 months in.
Are you paying yourself salaries?
Oh, no salary. We both quit our jobs. We took our collective savings. And the way that we did this was we said, we're just going to live as cheaply as we possibly can. So we lived in a 10-person house in Cambridge. We shared food with all our roommates. It was the era of cloud computing was just starting. So it's very cheap to do the hosting and stuff. So our total expenses for the two of us were, including the business expenses and personal, were $1,600 a month at that time for both of us total. That's how we were able to survive. And but we were getting really low. And we had this portfolio thing. People were using it. We're like, hey, do you want to pay for like a premium version? Do you want to pay for a way to collaborate with people on work? And everyone was like, maybe, but like, I might spend $5. And we're like, oh God, this is not going to work. The fortunate thing is this whole time that from the very beginning of when we started, we were going to these like startup meetups. There's this thing in Boston called the Web Innovators Group. And we were just going to commiserate basically with other entrepreneurs. And when we went to these things, people would be like, hey, you guys are the video guys. You keep trying to do video stuff. We're like, yeah. They're like, can you help me with video stuff? That's what these other startups are saying. And we were like, no. We help artists. Like, we do other things. Like, we don't do business stuff. Like, definitely not. And eventually, 8 months in, we're running out of money. We go to one of these things. Someone says the same thing. Like, oh, you're the video guys. Like, hey, we're trying to do video in our business. And we actually decided we should talk to them. And so we started talking to companies and very quickly, within a couple months, realized, got our first customer, Wistia, who came to us and they said, hey, we need to use video, but it's really not sexy. It's really simple. Like, we sent DVDs around the world. This is a medical device company. They sent DVDs of surgeries they were doing. They're like, could you give us a way to do that online?
What was the pre-existing modality at that point? Like, were people using YouTube that was not secure?
No, YouTube had no private way to share anything. The closest online version at the time was like an FTP server, if you remember those. There was no way to securely share the stuff, very simply. But for us, we thought this is going to be really simple to build, like really easy. We need a login structure. We need video hosting, which we had built as a byproduct of the portfolio thing. And we'd overbuilt a lot of stuff and done a lot of complicated things. So we said, when we're going to do this, we're going to make the simplest thing we possibly can make to solve the problem. And we're only going to build stuff that customers ask for. And so we had this first customer, potential customer. They were really interested in this, and we made up pricing for them. They were willing to pay us as consultants to build it. We said, no, we want to own the thing. And we had I remember we made a printout of the price. It was completely made up. And there was a light plan that was like $100 a month. There's a medium plan that was $200 a month. And then there was a heavy plan that was $400 a month. And I slid the piece of paper over to this guy, Ron, and he looked, he's like, we'll take the best. We'll take the heavy plan. And I was like, oh my God.
You're like, shit, I should have charged more for that.
Well, it's crazy. I mean, I had no idea how little that was perceived to be at that time. Because remember, we had like 100,000 visitors to this Ironing the Fly thing. We'd made $100, and that seemed rare and hard in the sense of like not easy to repeat, going viral. Now I have one guy willing to pay $400 a month for this thing, and so then it was like basically from that point about a year into when we started to get a new customer each month, and they were all wanted private, secure video sharing, and that's really where things started.
So you're picking up steam slowly. But you're picking up steam. Like, obviously, people took notice. And how quickly did copycats, like, emerge? They must have at some point.
It took a while. Because we were so early. I mean, that's what I didn't understand. Like, it seemed obvious to me the video is going to get really big. But, like, when we talked to companies who were potential customers at the time, most people were like, this sounds cool, but I don't make video. Like, it's way too expensive. Because back then it was like, you want to make a video, you needed a production team. And then that changed over time. So like we had the DSLR started supporting video, and that I would say it's kind of like, I think of that as like the price per video went from tens of thousands of dollars to thousands of dollars. And then the iPhone came along and added video, and then it dropped it to like hundreds of dollars. And then it's changed again actually in 2020, where it's like everyone sees their computer as a camera now. And so anyone can make a video. But back then it was so early. And there were a lot of other companies that saw this market and thought because of YouTube it was going to take off really fast. So we had a lot of competitors that raised a lot of money, but they were going after different segments of the market. They're all basically ended up going enterprise.
And you were going SMB.
We started thinking like, yes, we realized a few years into this that the magic was in SMB because they needed to use video. There's a lot of broad use cases. So a really simple product was really helpful. They valued it really highly because they were not video experts. That was another interesting thing is like the companies that were using video that were not a video production company valued it even more. And we found our way towards like giving you the analytics to track the videos, which started for internal purposes, and then embedding the videos. And that was the moment that things like really took off.
When did you decide that you were ready to and you wanted to raise some money?
Yeah, so we had about 10 customers, and they were from a bunch of different industries, and there were some really big companies we were talking to, and really big companies that had signed up. And we thought, well, there's too much work for us to do. We need help. And we had met a couple people we wanted to hire, but it was going to take a couple years before we'd have the money to actually hire them. And so one of them who we were talking to was like, hey, do you know what angel money is? Angel investing? And I was like, no. He's like, oh, well, you can raise money now from these people who are called angels. They're called angels because they give you the money. They don't really expect that much in return. They'll just help you out. I'm like, what the heck? This is cool. And so we ended up raising $650,000, which was 2 years after we started, to hire these two folks. And that was like, I mean, we got a lot right there. We got a lot wrong there, honestly, in terms of how we did that. The thing we got lucky on was that, as I mentioned, we had some competitors who raised a lot of venture capital at that moment. And the requirements of their business to grow revenue were so high and the market wasn't ready, that they're forced basically to go fully enterprise. And so they started selling huge, really expensive things and built huge sales forces. The market was not there to support them, and most of them went out of business. And so we were able to just like eke and survive on like the little market that was there. And then as the market showed up, we were still there, and we had built a great product. And eventually a lot of those customers that went with competitors who'd raised a lot of money ended up just coming their way to us.
What was the valuation, and how do you arrive at it?
Oh, the original valuation?
Yeah.
Oh, man. I mean, first of all, it was made up. I think it was like 2.7 million pre, something like that.
Were like convertible notes involved?
It was a convertible note, yeah. And then so that first round was really helpful. It caused us to think differently. I mean, I remember we had a forecast. We were going to be 8 people at the end of the year. And so we'd run through the money quickly. But this is 2008 where we had like, a recession effectively. And so we saw this happening and we're like, hey, this seems really stupid to hire a bunch of people right now. We should just survive as long as we can. And so we didn't hire anybody else except these other 2 people. And we just decided we'd just stay really close to the customer and understand their problems, their needs as well as we possibly could. And so we did that. And just as we were running out of that 650 was when we really started to get traction. And it was a combination of we'd never had embedding in the product, but our customers were asking for it. They're saying, hey, we love your analytics. We want to see what's happening in the videos on our website. And we were the secure thing. So we're like, no, we shouldn't do it. We're secure. We don't want that. And they're like, no, we do want that. And we actually listened to them. And so we launched a version of the product that had embedding with the analytics. And actually up until that point, you had to do a demo to use the product. And we made it self-service. And so we launched a free trial. And we were just starting to run out of money. We had like a month left to go at the end of a summer. And that summer, at the beginning of the summer, we had 30 customers. We were 3 years in, basically, from when we first got the product to market. And at the end of the summer, we had 200 paying customers. And so we went back to our angel investors and said, hey, look, good news and bad news. Bad news, we're going to run out of money real fast. Like, we got a problem. Good news is, look at this. Like, it's actually working. Customers are actually signing up. They're signing up in the middle of the night. They're using this thing. It's really growing. We think if we raise one more round, we can get through to profitability. And they were like, that doesn't seem, we don't really believe you, but it seems like there's something here. So we will help you. And so I had one of our investors who like helped me put the round together, which was a crazy story in and of itself. And very quickly, in a few days, we had the round closed and just continued forward. And that was the last round that we raised.
From an early stage and growing, how have you thought about marketing and spending on marketing? I mean, if you've only raised, less than a couple $1 million total, you probably aren't out over your skis in terms of customer acquisition costs and things like that.
Yeah, I think the early days we figured out kind of by accident, so I was making a lot of content and I believed in content as like the future, like getting your stuff indexed in Google, helping people find you in that way. And we were writing a lot of blog posts and that had kind of worked even with the other previous projects I talked about. Like, I'd written blogs for those things and I'd gotten thousands of subscribers at different moments in time. And so I believed that it was possible we could make a lot of content and that would be how people would discover Wistia. And so we did that pretty early and it was kind of working, not working that well, but it was kind of working. It was getting us more traffic. And then there was a few discrete moments where we had like big learnings forward. One was another accidental one, which was we'd grown the team to 6 people from 4. And that we grew that with customers. Like, there was some word of mouth going, but it was small, but it was enough that we were getting, more new customers are coming in. We're growing revenue, hired 2 people. And we felt really guilty because on our website at the time, we had a team page and the team page just had 4 of us on it. And actually the team page said the management. And we were trying to, we're getting B2B customers. So we're trying to like look professional. We're trying to look like a big company. So the implication was the management's 4 people, but there's a lot of other folks here. You can really trust us type of a thing. And I don't think it really looked like that. I don't think people really I don't think it was having much of an impact. And so anyway, these 2 new people joined the team. We felt guilty because they couldn't prove to their parents they actually worked at Wistia. So we shot a photo of the 6 of us and we did that in front of a whiteboard. That's how we decided to keep it businessy. It was like we had a whiteboard and we were all like stoic, like just kind of staring into the camera. But the guy who took the photo, he got us to do 2 other silly photos that we didn't think we were going to use. Just like kind of hands up, whatever, very goofy, silly photos. So we go to put the team page together and Brendan decides it's one of those new people, Jeff, on the team. It's Jeff's birthday. And he wants to give Jeff a birthday gift. And so his birthday gift is he makes on the team page an Easter egg which is if you type dance on the page, it randomly switches between the 3 photos of each person. So everyone's in different poses and it plays music. We were using like girl talk music. And so he's like, here, Jeff, happy birthday. Like, do this Easter egg on this page. And he did that and he was blown away by it. Everyone thought it was this funny little great thing. We put it on Twitter thinking nothing would happen and it went viral. And we saw a huge spike instantly of traffic to that page. We're like, that's cool. And then went away. And the funny thing that happened was 2 weeks later, we had the highest number of new customers signed up in a day that we had ever seen. And it was like a huge spike. Why did that happen? Well, we had a 2-week free trial back then. So what happened is a bunch of people saw this team page, saw the Easter egg. They thought it was funny or interesting. It caused them to care enough that they looked around at what Wistia was, thought it could help them, signed up for a trial. 2 weeks later, got a bunch of customers. And that was like a crazy moment because I thought that B2B needed to be like buttoned up and professional. And this team page was the least buttoned up, least professional thing we'd ever put on the website. But it was like fun and endearing and it showed the people behind the company. And that was enough to hook people to care. And so once that happened, we started to have more permission just to honestly have more fun in our marketing. And so we would teach you how to light something in a video and we'd actually have jokes and it would be silly and it would be endearing and show the actual people on the team. And we just did that type of thing over and over and over. And our content got bigger and bigger and our email lists got bigger and we got more organic traffic. And it just built into this kind of engine of word of mouth that just continued and continued and continued. And so it's honestly been one of the most efficient ways you could possibly grow, and been interesting because it was so different than everything else out there. It just like it stood out and it caused people to care.
Okay, as you were talking, so I used to work in B2B SaaS, this company called Power Advocate, which got bought by Verisk Analytics, the big publicly traded company. But I had such a different experience, and I'm wondering if it was price point to where I was selling supply chain and ops software to oil and gas companies, which is in Texas, which is like a stodgy industry in and of itself, right? And so I would fly to Houston and I would sell $200,000, $300,000 a year enterprise B2B SaaS. And I was wearing a suit and it was very, like comporting yourself in a certain way was very important. And then we would lose out to SAP or Oracle, because they were even more buttoned up. And I wonder if the difference there is like price point to where it's a different level, like the buyer is a different person and the price point is different. And so you can just have more fun and be more authentic. And you're not going to get fired for buying Wistia over whatever, maybe, whereas like you might literally get fired over buying Power Advocate versus SAP Ariba. How do you think that's like an accurate depiction of the difference?
I do think brand really matters, obviously, at the high end of the B2B market, right? Like, there's a reason why, we see Oracle, SAP advertising on like F1 races and like on major news channels and all these like things. Like, the brand matters, but I do agree that like, what are you buying in that moment? Because the fundamental thing about Wistia is that anyone can sign up and use it themselves. So it's like you're making a personal decision. And I think that is a key part of that. And I agree with you that I think brand really matters, but I think it just matters in different ways based on the segment of the customer.
No, I mean, you still do a lot of content today, and you do a lot of your own personal content. How do you justify it today? What do you think it actually delivers to you and to Wistia?
As human beings, we want shortcuts when we're thinking about options, right? Like we want to know, how can I kind of guess at how this company will act, or what can I expect from them going forward? And I think in subscription businesses that really matters, because if you're not just buying today, you're buying what you believe the thing will be in the future. And one of the things that we saw in those early days was that people really had a connection to individuals on the team at Wistia. Like, we'd host our customer conference, and, the 10 people on videos, the most people would come up to me like, I feel like I know you, Chris. And it was like really kind of amazing to watch that happen. And as we got bigger, the initial strategy was like, okay, we're just going to have more people on camera. Wistia is a human business. We're going to show more humans. And while that works, the connection with each individual was like not as strong. And so a few years ago, we made a conscious choice that was like, okay, I am effectively media trained at this point. I've done 1 million interviews. I've written 1 million things. I've done tons of talks. Like, I enjoy doing it. We should lean into Chris Savage again and Chris Savage's stories, which is going to be not 100% Wistia, but it's going to be maybe 30% Wistia, 30% entrepreneurship, and 30% like marketing content. And I just had a few things that really took off, and I watched the same thing happen with my personal content where people are like, oh, you reminded me about Wistia. You reminded me about this feature. You showed me this thing, and then I went and used it. And you hear enough of these stories that are qualitative. That's how it always starts. You hear people telling you qualitatively, like, yes, there's a connection here. And then over time, you can see the quantitative with enough scale. So we can see that like my personal investment in LinkedIn drives traffic to Wistia and people sign up because of it and whatever. That was not obvious probably in the first year. But what was obvious really quickly was, all this stuff of people reaching out, asking specific questions and mentioning it. Like we're like listening for that. So we discovered that pretty quickly. And content, one of the mistakes that we made at Wistia was not actually doubling down on some of the things that work. And I think that's the thing that a lot of people do. And where you want to diversify your risk. So you have something that's working, like for us, like these big, bold, creative content plays. And then you think to yourself, well, this is working. I should also add advertising in. And I should also add partnership channels. I should also add affiliate. You start layering in all these other channels that you want to add into. And obviously, if you add them and they all work great, fantastic. But they're all going to take a lot of effort. They're all going to take a lot of time. Getting them working really well is very hard.
And money. They all cost money.
They all cost money and they all cost time. And so then I think the other thing is like, what we often underestimate is the thing that's working, how much farther can you take it? And I think if I were to start over, that's one of the things I would look at really differently is like, okay, if I have a channel that's working, can I 10x this channel? And if that's still working, can I 10x this channel again? And I think we underestimate how big the world is, especially in an internet-connected world. We underestimate that all the time. And it's like, it's not more risky to invest more in a lot of cases. It's often less risky to invest in something that you know already works and just to do it again and again and again. And that's what I think we kind of learned that lesson to the point that now we're investing huge amounts more into content again. It's all working. We have a bunch of different shows that we do. We have much more organic stuff that we do. And the mistake that I made was just not pushing hard enough on that same thing.
Diversification is riskier than concentration in so many cases. It's very similar actually in consumer goods. There's this concept that, well, I'm going to diversify. So I'm going to be in Costco, but also Walmart, but also Target, but also Sprouts, but also Wegmans. And what you find is it actually degrades the business model. So it's, in a way, it's good. You get more revenue sources, but now your focus is divided in 10 different retailers. They all have different promo schedules. You're at different price points in most of them, yada, yada, yada. And so on paper, you're like, oh, I'm nice and diversified. And you look at a business over here where it's like, 70% Costco, 20% Walmart, 10% D2C. You're like, oh, that's a worse business.
To your point, in that case, it's like you might be 70% of your business is Walmart. But if you really build that real connection with Walmart, they give you more space. They understand your products more. And they start trusting you more. That part of the business has a shot at like growing dramatically faster than something else. And they're going to deal with somebody. So if they don't deal with you or you don't deliver for them, that actually becomes that you add your risk, right? Like that happens with partners all the time, and also in B2B, where I've seen you build a relationship with a partner, the relationship's really good. You're like, I should have another relationship like this. And you go do it. And now you're watering down what you're can actually deliver on, because like focus is actually the name of the game. And now you're less focused. And so you're not as responsive. You don't know the problems that they have in the same way. You can't scale the same way. And it's such an easy mistake to make because you want to diversify, but it's actually often adding more risk.
How do you like keep creativity alive in a company that's, starting to become big, right? So you've got a meeting about like IT systems one day and HR stuff another day. But how do you like stay creative yourself and also keep your team creative?
I think what you need to do is a little counterintuitive. I spent a long time searching for this, honestly, because I knew the creativity was what was making us different, right? And I thought the secret to creativity was chaos. And it turns out it's not. It turns out there's an amazing book on this, Creativity Inc., by Ed Catmull that really was enlightening for me. He is the creator of Pixar and talks about how you can make something like Toy Story with like 1,000 people working on it, and yet it still pulls your heartstrings. It's still super creative and interesting. Like, how do you do that? And I look at it as like, it's about like, how do you create the right constraints and the right areas of ownership such that each individual person or team actually has the freedom to be creative. The way that looks at Wistia today is we have really clear OKRs for the year. Everyone understands what they are. Their OKRs ladder up into the company OKR. So you can understand, if I'm successful with in my team, this is going to help the business. Like, I can see the connection. And then we try to have the teams be self-sufficient, that they have everything they need, ideally, to do the job they're trying to do. But then it's up to them to solve it however they want. And so there's actually, within that constraint space, that really, you should have a lot of freedom to be creative there. And I think that's like how I think about it on like the team level. There's also this great Steve Jobs quote that's like, creativity is just the connection of things. And I'm gonna link two people together. So Steve Jobs said that. And then Ben Chestnut, who is the CEO at MailChimp, the founder of MailChimp, he said, which I thought it really resonated with me, the most important part of that sentence, like creativity is the connections of things, is the things part.
What do you mean by that?
What that means is like, you can only make so many different connections between existing things. If you have a lot more things, it's a lot easier to be creative. And so from like a holistic business perspective, what you want is like, you want people to be shipping a lot of stuff very fast. And if you're going really fast, you're making a lot of things, then it's easier to see how they connect to each other. And that ends up letting you be really creative. So in our world in software, Wistia is like editing tools, recording tools, hosting, analytics, live tools. So if we make our live tool better, great, you have a better live experience. But then we make our editor better, you put that together, you can do a better job at taking clips from live events. And if our analytics are better, then like the clips you made from the live events, faster whether or not they're working. And all that might be why someone signs up, is for that one specific workflow, but there's hundreds of workflows when you start combining the things in all different ways. And so the faster we ship and the more things we have, the more opportunity we see of ways to link things together. And so it actually, as a business, makes it easier to be creative. And speed, I think, is like a huge part of that.
The core of your business is you're helping people who are using video online to be successful with that. And if you get more velocity, it's probably like more velocity of features. You've got like a 200-person team now. I found when I started to grow my team, I expected to double it and then have 2 or 4x the amount of velocity of stuff coming out of them. And I kind of found the opposite. I discovered the opposite was true. We have all of these people, and it seems like are we slowing down? How is this possible? Like, have you encountered anything like that? Or what do you think?
Oh yeah. We doubled our product and engineering team and expected to go twice as fast, and we went half the speed basically. And it took cultural change to get fast. It took us saying like, hey, the way we used to work was we'd look at roadmaps and the senior management would like approve the roadmap. Seemed simple enough. Seems like a good idea. We should know what we're building, right? But what ended up happening was people would prepare for these meetings where their roadmap's going to be approved, and they would need to have research and vet why 1 is the top priority and 2 is the second and 3 is the third, all the way down. So we'd have these meetings, and I'd ask all these questions. I would get ready for these meetings. I'd think to myself, what's the hardest question I can ask and no one's thinking about, and go in there. But what ended up happening was like, we didn't realize that culturally, even if someone thought maybe like number 7 on their list might actually be the most impactful, but they maybe didn't have that much research. It was like their intuition telling them, or like one customer conversation that really stood out or something. In a world where they're prioritizing their own roadmap completely, they would take number 7, they would make it 1, especially if it was easy to do. They would never do that in this context. And so we cemented accidentally this culture of trying to be really sure about what we were building. And so we said, no, we're going to flip this on its head. It wasn't working. We thought it would go faster. We said, all right, we're going to change this. It's our problem. We've created a cultural issue here. We're not going to control your roadmap. You ship whatever you want to ship. This is the OKR that you own. This is the part of the product, the customer problem that you own. We need you to do whatever you think is best in that period of time. But the most important thing is we want you to ship something every 2 weeks. And if you can ship every 2 weeks, you can learn like a 2-week cycle and you can get better much faster, right? So we'll go through a year. We'll do 26 things that we ship, not like 1 or 2 that we were pretty sure are going to work. And I can't tell you, like, the speed change for Wistia was unbelievable. It was within a month. I saw the difference. I had teams coming to me that before had said, we think this thing we're going to build is 6 months away. And they got it built in 2 weeks. And it's because they had the freedom to do it their way. And they thought it was going to be impactful, and often it wasn't. So it was like a huge cultural shift of like letting go and empowering the teams. And then we give a lot of feedback, and we try to make sure that the teams have the right combinations on them. Like, do you have a great product manager? Do you have a great designer? Do you have a great tech lead? Do you have great engineers? And if you get that mix right, then it really works. But it took breaking and changing a lot of stuff to go fast.
I mean, the way you tell the story, it sounds like you like woke up one day, you're like, hey, we need to do this different. And you let everyone know, and they're like, all right, we're just doing it differently now. But like, I'm imagining if that maybe some people had to convince you that things had to be done differently. There were arguments, people were fired and quitting and things like that.
It was not super messy, but it was messy. I mean, it was people were saying we're going too slow. And for a long time, we had the excuse that we were understaffed. So we were pre-COVID often like trying really hard to build the team and hire, but it was very hard to hire, very competitive to hire in Boston. And so it was kind of a given. Oh, you want to hire 20 engineers this year? Good luck. You're probably not going to get 20. Maybe you get 12 or whatever. So it felt like we were always understaffed. So we had our speed breakthrough after COVID happened. And so we were a remote business. We became a remote business after COVID. So hiring changed. It was no longer hard. It's much easier for us to hire great people. We get hundreds of people who apply for a role versus having to convince people to consider it. Like, that was very different. We lost that excuse. We went from feeling understaffed to actually hiring all the roles we expected to hire. So the teams were fully staffed. So that understaffed excuse was kind of gone. We let it run the way it was for, I'm going to say 8 months, and didn't see a change in speed. And we kept waiting for the change to happen. Kept waiting. You know, there's this, I'm sure you've heard the like form, storm, norm, perform, which is when you're building a team, you first need to form them. Once they form, they're going to storm, which means that there's going to be different ways that people want to work. There's going to be challenges, whatever and then they have to, after the storming part occurs, they're going to norm. So what are the norms we use for how we work? And once that happens, then they can finally perform. Okay. So form, storm, norm, perform. We knew that these teams had to go through that process. So we were like waiting and waiting and waiting. And eventually we just felt like we'd waited long enough. And then we also had people on the team complaining we're going too slow. And in particular, it was some of our designers who were complaining they were going too slow. And we had a great designer quit. And I remember that was the moment finally of like, I knew this designer was really great. I trusted their designs. I could see the work they were doing. It was really good. And they felt that they were too far removed from, they'd make something that would take way too long for us to actually build it. And that was the moment that everyone was like, you're right. Like we have a problem. We have to change everything. But it was shocking how fast it changed. That's what I never believed. I thought we were going to say, like many things in business, like we'll make a change and I hope in a year it's better. A lot of businesses being really patient. And it was a month. And once it changed, it was really interesting because once you saw teams going fast, other teams were like, I want to go fast too. What are they doing? And so then we just the norming part of this, it was easier to spread across everybody. Like, hey, what are people doing that's working? And it just, I guess that changed in October of 22. And in 2022, we shipped 12 product updates that we told customers about. And in 23, we shipped like over 70. Same team, same number of people, basically the same people. At 24, we're shipping faster than we were in 23. And it's all been this like cultural shift that got us there.
As you were talking, I just I was reminded of something that I say all the time, which is trial and error is still the best strategy. Trial and error is still the best strategy. Every time we did a similar thing, did a bunch of research, or maybe you hire a consultant or whatever, and you're operating under the past results will dictate future happenings. Half of the time it fails, right? And so you're better just trying it and probably have the same success rate, but you need half as many people to do it. You don't pay the consultants to do it. And so long as, of course, the critical variable is, can you reverse the decision? If you can reverse the decision, just do it today, because you can reverse it. It's not, the fallout is not meaningful. And so just do it today. What really, really, really sucks is you spend a bunch of money in like 3 months producing an epic video and it falls flat. You could have just tried 4, 5, 6, 7 really cheap videos and had the same or better results and done it in half the time. So it's like cheaper, quicker, iterate more, and if it's reversible, just try it.
We've talked about that as like, you need to be able to sustain some failures and then you're fine. Like if your system allows you to be able to reverse the decision because it didn't work, then you're good. The problem is like, I think when people put themselves in a spot where it has to work and then it doesn't, right?
And there is no way to predict, like people, it's weird that we pretend there are ways to predict everything rather than acknowledging we can't predict. Like when Justin TV, I've also been thinking about Justin TV as you talk, because they had that famous pivot too. And there was no way to predict that people would love watching people playing video games. That was not really a predictable thing.
I mean, we met those guys the day they launched because we went to some, like, YC was in Boston back then, and we knew someone in it, and we went to some event, and like Justin was wearing the camera. And he's like, this is our big idea. And I was like, what the hell is this guy doing? Like, what is this guy talking about? And then when they turned into Twitch, that seemed so surprising. But from their perspective, at this point, they launched a live streaming thing. People are using it. I think people were using it for video gaming, like, relatively quickly. And they saw an opportunity and went for it, right? And like, if they hadn't tried that, they would not have found it.
I think you're absolutely right. Trial and error is the right strategy. I actually think that so few people can get themselves just psychologically in a position where they're willing to just, even if they can fail, just fail over and over.
I think school, right? Like, if you think about it, is like, if someone told you you're going to get 20 Fs and then you're going to get the best A you can get, they'd be like, what are you talking about? Like, it doesn't make any sense. It's like everything is supposed to be perfect. And so therefore, it's really, you're trained, like your brain is trained not to want to do this. It feels horrible.
And speed matters less, and speed and iteration matters less in school too.
Yeah, and I think it's just like, if you can't fail, and like, I completely agree, speed, you hand in a thing and it's a C, but maybe it could have been the paper could have been the best paper ever because your concept's so cool. And you just need more feedback. You don't normally go back and like write the version that actually could be the A. And I think people, like, there's so many different types of failure. And the most common is like, no one cares. That's like the most common failure. Made a thing, no one cares. What does that mean? That means no one saw it. Usually it's pretty rare to have something that everyone saw that no one cares about. If everyone saw it, they cared it in some way. And I think that's like, in terms of a mode of failure, it's like really not a bad one. But it's, to your point, if you spent 1 year, you had one opportunity and you did it and no one cared, that sucks. But if you did 12 or 50 things in a year and people didn't care about, let's say 12, they didn't care about 11 of them, but one they really cared, that might be all it ever takes. And I think that's the other thing we don't appreciate is like, failure isn't as bad. And if you find something that works, you're probably going to underestimate how far you can take it.
The main thing I'm curious about is, how do you not get bored? Because inherently entrepreneurs are so ADD and just, I want to do 30 different projects. And my sense is, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but doing things like the podcast and some of the personal stuff helps you scratch that itch a little bit. It helps you do new stuff, talk to new people, maybe talk to people in different industries that you're not in. And so by aggregating these things around Wistia, it adds that novelty. It breaks the habituation process that's kind of a death knell that can cause boredom, which is the worst case, right?
Mm-hmm. And I think like you're right on that. Part of the podcast for me is that it's actually fun to do, and I learn a lot of stuff. I'm constantly learning. And what people don't realize is I'll ask questions on my podcast talking too loud, and I'll get some answer. I'm like, oh, they don't realize what they just gave me, like how good this is. And then it shows up in Wistia 6 months later, and that happens all the time. I also just think that like if your vision for what you're doing can keep growing and changing, then there is actually we're constantly building new things at Wistia. And I see my job as to be in like really far in the future, like what are the big trends coming and things we need to be aware of, and in the ultra present. Like I am using our products every day. I'm using competitive products all the time. I'm constantly playing with and trying to understand where things are going to go. And so it's like ultra present, ultra future. And that actually keeps me really engaged and entertained because we're working on big problems, and like we don't know what the answers to a lot of these things are going to be. So it's this constant, there's parts of the business that are constantly iterating, constantly changing, constantly innovating. And then there's parts that need to be operationalized and scaled. And that is not as, there's parts of that I find interesting, but there's other people I have on the team who find that far more interesting than I do. So a lot of it's just getting matched up to like, do you have the right team in place and the right people? And if I had to be the one person who's constantly, for example, building our OKR system, I would get bored. Or I might change the system too dramatically every time. That's sort of what I would do. So I look at that as like, it's like, do you have the right team in place? Because we have the right team. Everyone's owning the right things. People are thinking about the right problems, thinking about the right time scale. And I ask myself that question. I've had to ask it a few times when we've had the opportunity to sell the business of like, what would I want to spend my time on? And the truth is I'm so engaged and find the problems we're working on so interesting that I actually genuinely want to spend my time on them. And if I sold, I would be searching for big, hard problems to work on. That's just how I am. That's how I'm wired. So I feel fortunate that I figured that out, because that's the thing that I think like not everyone can keep doing a job like this. But for me, it is so fun that it feels kind of like part of the secret sauce is like, well, we can be unbelievably persistent. And that gives me a lot of freedom to try things. And also, as we were talking before, sustained failure. Like we can have failure 20 times in a row, but if we get it right on the 21st and the 22nd, like we're going to be in really good shape.
Well, what about burnout? Have you had sustained amount of time, periods of time where you just kind of felt, building a business can be just deeply frustrating for some periods of time, or it can be exciting and you have like adrenal fatigue after some chaos. Have you had burnout? How have you gotten yourself out of a bad, funk?
The closest I've had that was like really bad was our senior management. There was a moment when our senior management team was not high functioning. And so it was very, very, very hard to get things done and people weren't working well together. And I found that to be extremely draining and tiring. And as I was going through trying to fix that, those were the moments I was like, man, I don't know. Like this is where I was like, I could just stop doing this. I think it's, at some point also before we decided to do the buyback, so at that moment we had the opportunity to sell, right? I'd always told my wife, I was like, someday I'm going to sell this business. I'm going to be here all the time. We're going to be able to do tons of shit. It's going to be great. And then when I told her, I'm like, that was justifying me working on the weekends and working at night. And I mean, I love working, so I was doing it all the time. And then I decided not to sell. I was like, so, hey, honey, so we're not going to sell right now. She's like, okay, all right. And I'm like, I think I need to change something about how I work. And let's pretend, what would I do if I did sell? Well, I was like, we would travel more. We'd take more vacations. We were not traveling that much. And I was like, how about I start taking a lot more vacation? And like, we actually start traveling on those vacations and doing things like that. And she's like, all right, I'll see it. I'll believe it when I see it. And so I started actually taking, 6 weeks of vacation a year and actually trying to turn off my email and, not do all the stuff. And it took some getting used to, and then I was able to actually do it and actually take real vacations. And what I realized is, I think it seems so obvious now, but it was not obvious to me then, was like, you need to take real vacations for many reasons. Like, it helps you avoid burnout, but also it's just like working out. Like, you want to get strong? If you lift every day and you don't take rest days and you don't sleep well, you don't eat right, you're not going to get strong. You're going to get injured. You want to get strong, you need to lift a bunch. You need to do the right exercise. You got to eat right. You got to sleep well. You got to take rest days. Like, that's the secret. The secret is in the rest and recovery. I mean, we know this, right, in the fitness world. The same thing is true at work. Like, you can get really stressed at work. It's not necessarily bad to be stressed, but if you don't have the time to actually recover and process and come back stronger, you will burn out. You will get injured. You will not be able to sustain it. So the way I look at it now is like, I have to take vacations. I work out all the time. I try to sleep right, try to eat right. And I see that all as my building up my ability to manage stress in both my, physical stress when I'm working out and actually mental, emotional stress when I'm at work. And I think that, like, stress is not a bad thing. Stress is bad if you can't recover from it. And so that's how kind of like I look at the business today. And I encourage people on my team to do the same thing, like take real vacations. The other byproduct, by the way, of taking real vacations is it causes you to scale. Because when you take a real vacation and you tell people, do not contact me, they often we're used to solving problems with specific people. And so if you're not there, someone else has to try to figure out how to solve the problem. And almost always they often can. And so that was another big thing, was like, I'd come back from vacation, I'd just get less email. I guess get less Slack messages because someone on the team would have taken on some problem that previously I was always involved in.
Do you have kids?
Yeah, I have 2 kids, 6 and 8.
So how did that change things? Like, did you did you not see them when they were little and then you felt guilty about that and then you're like, I want to see them more? Like, how did that affect the arc?
Yeah. So my first kid was about 1 when we decided to do the buyback. And I was just like really thinking about, I was kind of surprised that this year I'm 10 years in, right? I was surprised I was still doing it. I was thinking about that a lot. I was like, how am I still doing this? It's been 10 years. Like, we thought we'd do this for 6 months. This is just insane. And I went to some event and this thing called the Tugboat Institute. I don't know if you've heard of that, but it's like this. It's this event for founders who run private businesses. A lot of them are like very long living private businesses, really successful, trying to figure out, a lot of them are like family businesses, generational wealth, like all this kind of stuff. We were like the smallest company at this when we went to it. And I watched this guy give a talk, and the talk was about how he'd been the CEO of a company and he had sacrificed everything to make the company work, but he ended up getting divorced and like lost the connection to his kids. And his regret was that he hadn't made enough time for his marriage and for his kids while he was building the business. Like, he didn't understand that like he could have actually made that time. And it hit me at this moment that my first daughter was 1. And I was like, and then we decided to, that first year I was like really sleep deprived and trying to figure out how to balance it all. But then we decided to do the buyback, decided not to sell, decided I would take more time for vacation. And I eventually realized, I was like, the difference between this business working or not is not going to be if I work out in the morning or if I come home at 5 to hang out with my kids. Like, if that's the difference, like, we have a problem. And so it really did change my perspective. The other thing that happens when you have kids is your life becomes really programmed about drop-offs and pickups and daycare and all this stuff. You start thinking about time differently. And so I noticed that when I came back to work after this, I would get really frustrated if people started a meeting late, or if the meeting ran late and my schedule got screwed up, I would get pissed. And so people would be like, oh, this person isn't here, we can't start yet. I'm like, yeah, we can. We're starting now. And they're like, what? And I'm like, no, we start now. We're done in an hour. If they're not here, they missed the decision. Sorry. Like, that's just, I've got more important things to deal with. And I think it was like a healthy thing for me. I think a healthy thing for the company to grow up. And I realized why all these other parents had been so annoyed by how like lackadaisical we had been about meeting times before then.
Yeah, I can relate to that. I'd say I did make some of those mistakes in terms of ruining vacations because of work and things like that. But having kids definitely made me triage my time way more ruthlessly. And I think that was ultimately good for the team.
it's a good thing. I mean, I think it's like we start things because, at least I started the company in part because I wanted to be my own boss. Like, I didn't want to be told what to do. I wanted freedom, you know? Then you realize you need all these systems and structure and schedules and timing and whatever. And like, well, this doesn't look that different from like probably a lot of other well-run companies. It's like, oh, it's a different type of freedom. It's a different type of opportunity. It's a different type of problem solving. And like, actually, you know, there's a lot of good in structure if you can use it to get to the right place.
What's going to make you feel like you spent the next 10 or 17 years in a way that makes you say that was a really successful decade or so?
I think it's like I've come to realize that I just get a huge amount of joy out of working with world-class people and working on hard problems. Trying to break through on solving hard problems is like my favorite thing. And I have enough trust that as long as the problems we're working on are big enough, we will build something that continues to be more and more valuable throughout that. And I also have come to learn that like if you get the right group of people working on something, it doesn't feel like work. If I look back in 10 years or 17 years and I think, man, I really loved what I did that whole time and I learned a lot. And also the company grew and the people on the team took on more responsibility. And that ultimately means like we delivered better things for customers. I'll feel like I spent my time well. Yeah, it's hard to find stuff that you really care about, that you're good at, that you enjoy. And I think if you find that, like, hold on to it, you know?
It reminds me of I mentioned habituation earlier. I think the whole like work to live thing is, you talk about people who sold their business and now they're living, but they're just kind of hanging out. Maybe they ski here or whatever, sit by the pool, and they habituate and then they get bored. It's like, it goes from like chaos to habituation to boredom, and then ultimately find themselves to be like as unhappy as they've ever been in their entire life. And so for me, it's always just about how do you fight that? And the best way to fight that is work. It doesn't have to be professional work. It could be philanthropic work. It could be whatever, but it's work. Like that is what it is. It's work. And so, yeah, I have the same perspective as you do. It's living to work, because that's the only way or the best way to fight habituation and to fight boredom, which ultimately drives unhappiness.
Yeah, I think we just want to feel like we're a part of something, right? I think we all want to be a part of something, part of a family, part of a community, part of a gym, part of a company. And when you're working and trying to improve on that, it always feels good, especially in hindsight. Like, it's funny. I look back, I never thought this would be true, but I look back on some of the hardest moments I've had at Wistia so fondly now. It's really bizarre. And I've realized it's like a lot of the hardest moments are where I learned the most. And that it's just not what I would have expected. You know, I thought I would do this for a short period of time. I'd get money and that would be it. And I'm like, that's not it. Like, there's more to life than that. And, yeah, I don't know. I mean, everyone has to find the thing that gets them jazzed and excited. I just feel lucky that I found something that I am excited about, you know.
Sometimes, and I would argue you need pain on a daily basis, right? There's a reason why rich people cold plunge, you know? And that, I think that's true for work. Yeah, work sucks. It's like, and you're like, whoa, I don't have to work. Why do I endure this suckiness sometimes on a daily basis? Because you need that pain. Like, you just need it.
Well, you can't get resilient otherwise, right? Like, because you cannot know, like, life is unfiltered. Like, we can't control what's going to happen to us, what's going to happen to our family, what's going to happen to our friends. We don't know the day you're going to wake up and get bad news. But what you can control is, like, your ability. You can try to be more resilient when those things happen. And the only way to do that is to experience something really hard, some kind of pain or something on some consistent basis.
This is awesome. Do you want to move on to some rapid fire questions?
Let's do it.
All right. I'll take the first one here. It's a Peter Thiel question. It's a classic. Chris, do you have an important truth that you believe in that very few people agree with you on?
I mean, I think probably go back to earlier in the conversation on this, but I think that people dramatically underestimate the power of brand in B2B. I think there's some belief when you're making a B2B buying decision, and you have to believe that a product's going to deliver for you. And that's inherently like, there's uncertainty and there's emotion and there's stakes there. And I think that that brand can have a really big impact. And I think that's very underused.
All right, number 2, what are commonly cited platitudes, things people say you have to do to make your startup win that you just think are not right, that are falsehoods?
I think people really get like MVPs wrong a lot. I think that MVP, like minimum viable product, is a cool concept, but there's often like some hook or detail or some level of quality that like is the difference between companies that really take off and ones that don't. And so like if you evaluate a company only with an MVP, you are probably missing out on a lot of opportunity.
Next one is, what do people dislike about you?
I'm sure a lot that I don't know.
Give us the full list. Give us the laundry list.
I mean, I am very excitable. I can really distract people. I have the power to distract at a very. I think that's probably how I annoy people the most in meetings. That I send them off on tangents, or I get them excited about things with like small amounts of information, or I think I can spin people out pretty easily. I'm an extreme early adopter, and that annoys people around me because I will, embarrass my family as I wear Vision Pro on the plane. I'm happy to do it, and they're not happy for me to do it. I'm sure there's other things. There's a lot, I think, probably, but that's probably enough for now, right?
Yeah, maybe the listeners will chime in.
Yeah, please chime in.
All right, what's been your biggest mistake or regret throughout the journey? I'm sure there's many, but was there one where you're like, I wish I could take that one back?
When I've made big decisions that I went against my instincts on, that's what I always regret, especially if my instincts were like very different from the data. We made a business model decision with one of our products 5-6 years ago, and it felt wrong at the time. But like the data all said, like basically it's like, should we have separate products or should they be all in one? It was like, oh, the data all says our MBA analysis is like these need to be separate, and that was like ended up being like a huge mistake. And my instinct was not to do it, and I should have like actually listened to it and trusted more, because even if I had been wrong, I wouldn't have regretted it the same way.
What's the hardest decision you ever had to make along your journey?
I think the hardest decisions have always been around people, because, can this person step into this role? Is this actually the time you need to let somebody go who's been really amazing before? And it's uncertain. Like, people are really complicated creatures.
Totally. Same here.
Hey, this was great.
Boom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Look, thanks, guys. Really got in there on this one. Got a little heady. Got deep. It was good.
That's what we try to do here. So that was awesome, Chris.
Bye.
All right, that's a wrap. Thanks for listening, and thank you to our sponsors, IQ Bar. Go to Amazon.com, search for IQ Bar, buy one, wait for it to arrive, leave a review. Please leave a review. Reviews are massive. Our second sponsor is Ramp. Go to ramp.com/glass. They give you $250 for free when you sign up. It's the best credit card / spend management software there is. Use it for years. Love it. Our third sponsor is Gorgias, GORGIAS.com. It's the best help desk software there is. We use it too. Also love it. Request a demo and mention Eating Glass. They will give you preferential treatment. They'll treat you well. If you like the podcast in general, subscribe, review it, tell a couple friends, tell your mom, and tune in a couple weeks. Talk to you then.